terrifying discoveries in ancient catacombs that were sealed to protect humanity. Somewhere beneath the city you are standing in right now, there are tunnels. They have been there longer than the streets above them. Longer than the buildings. Longer than any record that survives of who built them, or why, or what they sealed inside before they left. Most of what has ever been buried was buried for a reason. Not for preservation, not for memory, but because something existed that the living world could not accommodate. Over centuries, explorers, archaeologists, and those who simply wandered too far into the dark have returned with discoveries that do not fit neatly into what we understand about history, death, or the decisions made by the people who came before us. Some of what they found has been studied, measured, cataloged, and quietly moved away from public access. Some locations remain sealed, not because of structural danger, not because of contamination, but because of what is still inside them. What follows is a descent through 10 of the most disturbing catacomb systems ever documented. Each one holds something that does not belong in the world above, and as you move deeper into this list, the discoveries stop feeling like history. They start feeling like warnings. Number 10. Palermo Catacombs. Italy. There is a monastery on the edge of Palermo, Sicily, that looks, from the outside, like any other aging religious building in southern Italy. Stone walls. A quiet courtyard, the kind of place that feels removed from time. Beneath it is something that removed itself from time entirely. The Capuchin monks who maintained this site beginning in the late 16th century developed a method of preservation that had no precedent, and as far as documented history records, no clear explanation for why it worked as well as it did. They did not use chemicals, they did not use sealed chambers or controlled environments. They used a process involving underground dehydration rooms, chambers cut into volcanic rock, where the recently deceased were placed for months at a time, their bodies slowly surrendering moisture to the porous stone around them. What remained was not a skeleton. What remained was something that still looked like a person. The corridors of the Palermo catacombs now hold approximately 8,000 preserved individuals, arranged along the walls in clothing chosen to reflect their status, their profession, or the wishes of the families who paid for their placement here. They stand in alcoves, they sit in rows, some are positioned in poses of rest. Some appear to be looking at the entrance. The arrangement was not accidental. Every individual was placed with deliberate intent, positioned according to a system that took social hierarchy seriously, even in death. Priests occupy separate corridors from professionals. Virgins were placed apart from married women. Children have their own section. A long, narrow passage that researchers have described as one of the most psychologically difficult spaces in any catacomb system in the world. At the far end of that passage is a glass case. Inside, it is a child who has been there since Faye. Her name was Rosalia. She was 2 years old. The physician who preserved her used a method he never fully documented, and despite over a century of scientific analysis, no one has been able to fully replicate what he did. Her preservation is described as near perfect. When light touches her face at certain angles, researchers have noted that she appears to be sleeping rather than deceased. The method died with the physician. The formula was never recovered. And Rosalia remains in the case exactly as she was left, while the world above continues to change around her. There is something in the Palermo catacombs that no scientific explanation has settled. It is not the preservation itself. It is the decision, made by the monks, made by the families, made across 3 centuries of deliberate practice, to keep the dead here, visible, present, and watching. The last section of the catacombs that was sealed to public entry was closed, not due to structural failure, but because of the condition of what was found when a previously unknown passage was opened during maintenance work in the phase. The details of what that passage contained have never been fully released. What was documented was quietly archived. What was found inside was resealed. Number 9. Brno Ossuary. Czech Republic. In the Czech city of Brno, beneath the Church of St. James, there is a space that was used for over 300 years and then forgotten for nearly a century. Not lost, not abandoned. Deliberately covered, the Brno Ossuary was sealed sometime in the 18th century. A layer of earth and stone was placed over the entrance. The streets above were rebuilt. The city continued, and the chamber beneath, containing the skeletal remains of an estimated 50,000 individuals, was left in complete darkness for generations. It was rediscovered in Faye during routine construction work. When investigators first entered, they found a space that had been arranged with extraordinary deliberateness. The bones were not scattered, they were organized, sorted into geometric patterns along the walls, stacked in configurations that had clearly been designed by someone who spent a significant amount of time making decisions about placement, order, and structure. What made this discovery unusual was not the scale, though the scale was significant. What made it unusual was the evidence of organization from multiple distinct periods. The bones had been arranged, then rearranged, then arranged again over decades, possibly over a century, by hands that never identified themselves and left no written record of why the work was being done. Researchers examining the ossuary found that certain sections had been deliberately sorted. Long bones in one area, skulls in another. But within the skull sections there were subgroupings, smaller arrangements within the larger ones, that followed a logic no one has been able to conclusively interpret. Some of the skulls had been marked, small notations carved or inscribed into the bone, not names, not dates, but symbols that do not correspond to any known religious or administrative marking system from the period. The symbols appeared across multiple skulls. The same symbols repeated. Who marked them, and why, and what the marks signified has never been determined. Brno's ossuary was open to limited public access in Fay after over a decade of analysis. Certain sections of the chamber remain closed. The explanation given for restricted areas is preservation concerns. The marked skulls are not on display. Their current location is documented internally. Their documentation has not been made public. Number 8. Lima Catacombs. Peru Lima is built on a foundation it does not fully acknowledge. Beneath the Basilica of San Francisco in the heart of Peru's capital city lies a catacomb network that held, by conservative estimate, 75,000 individuals during the centuries it was in active use. The network runs beneath several city blocks. Its full extent has not been mapped. The passages that have been explored were explored with significant difficulty. The passages that have not been explored remain that way because of what early investigators found when they attempted to continue further. This is where something shifts. The Lima catacombs were not built by a single culture or a single era. The tunnels that were used by Catholic religious orders during the colonial period were themselves built into and around earlier passages that predate the Spanish arrival in Peru, passages whose origin and purpose have not been conclusively established. When colonial period bones were cleared and organized into the geometric displays that visitors see today, the workers encountered sections of tunnel that held materials inconsistent with the period artifacts, objects, things that should not have been in a space used by colonial-era religious institutions. Several of these objects were removed and sent to academic institutions for analysis. The reports that came back were not published. What the workers also found in a section of tunnel that runs beneath what is now a public street was a sealed chamber. The sealing was not structural. It was deliberate. The chamber had been closed from the inside, a distinction that the initial excavation report noted and then did not return to. The chamber was opened. What was documented inside was described in the initial survey as an active site of cultural significance requiring further study. Further study was never formally published. The chamber was resealed. The passage leading to it was closed, and the sections of the Lima catacombs that visitors access today represent only the outermost layer of a system that extends much further than the tour route suggests. There is a reason the map given to visitors ends where it ends. Number 7. Komel Shokafa. Egypt. There is a place in Alexandria, Egypt, that was discovered entirely by accident. In 1900, a donkey fell through the ground. The animal had been walking across what appeared to be ordinary earth when the surface gave way beneath it, and it fell into a shaft that no one on the surface had known existed. When investigators lowered themselves into the opening that the donkey's fall had created, they found themselves in a space that had been sealed for nearly 2,000 years. What they found inside has been described by archaeologists as one of the most architecturally complex underground spaces in the ancient world. But the architecture was not what made Komel Shokafa significant. What made it significant was what the architecture meant. The site is a product of deliberate cultural collision. Egyptian burial iconography combined with Greek architectural forms and Roman construction methods in a space that was built at the intersection of three civilizations. The figures carved into the walls are Egyptian gods wearing Roman military armor. Greek architectural columns frame burial alcoves that follow pharaonic tradition. The space was built by people who understood all three systems and chose deliberately to blend them into something that belonged fully to none of them. Why this was done, and for whom, has never been definitively answered. The main hall of Komel Shokafa contains 3 ornate burial chambers. Around them are dozens of smaller alcoves, but beneath the main level, accessible by a flooded lower shaft that has never been fully explored. There is a second level that investigators have only partially documented. The water that fills the lower shaft is not groundwater. Its origin has not been fully traced. When pumping attempts were made in the 1990s to lower the water level and allow access, the water returned faster than it was removed. From a source that was not identified, the lower level of Komel Shokafa remains inaccessible. What was found in the partial investigation of the accessible portions of that level included carved chambers that do not match the style of the upper levels. Older, more deliberately concealed, and containing burial arrangements that did not follow any of the three cultural traditions visible above. They followed something else. What that tradition was and who practiced it remains an open question in the academic literature. An open question that has been open for over a century. Until now, these places have felt distant. Historical, the kinds of sites that belong to the past and stay there. From this point forward, what lies ahead is different. The discoveries stop being archaeological curiosities. They become something that the people who found them wished they had not. What follows is not history. What follows is what was sealed and why it needed to be. Number 6. Maltese Catacombs. Malta, the island of Malta, is small, roughly 250 square kilometers of limestone rising from the Mediterranean. It has been inhabited for 7,000 years, and in that time the people who lived there found uses for the soft stone beneath the surface that archaeologists are still attempting to understand. The catacombs of Malta, concentrated primarily around the ancient city of Rabat, are not a single system. They are dozens of separate complexes, some connected, some isolated, cut into the limestone by communities across multiple centuries. Many have been studied, many have been partially mapped, many have not been entered since they were sealed. What distinguishes the Maltese catacombs from other ancient burial sites is the physical evidence of activity that extended well beyond burial. Carved into the rock of several complexes are spaces that do not function as tombs. Large circular tables cut from stone, curved benches integrated into the walls. Spaces that were designed for occupation, for people to enter, to sit, to remain for extended periods. The interpretation offered by most academic sources is that these spaces were used for ritual funerary meals. The community of the deceased would gather in the catacombs to share a meal in the presence of the dead. This interpretation has been questioned. The reason it has been questioned is the depth at which some of these gathering spaces were found. They are not near the surface. They are not easily accessible. Several of the carved gathering spaces discovered during the 20th century are located at points within the catacomb network that required navigating significant distances of tunnel in near total darkness, past multiple chambers of the dead before reaching them. Bringing food and candles to these depths for a communal meal in a space surrounded by human remains was not simply an act of ritual. It was an act of deliberate immersion. Something was being reinforced through that experience. Something was being communicated to those who made the journey. In one complex near Rabat, a sealed chamber was discovered in 1992 during infrastructure work. The chamber had been cut from the limestone with a precision that did not match the cruder tool marks elsewhere in the complex. Inside, investigators found no bones, no burial arrangements, no indication of funerary use. What they found were carvings covering every surface of the chamber. Dense, systematic, extending from the floor to the ceiling in a script that has not been matched to any known ancient language from the Mediterranean. The chamber was photographed. The photographs were archived. The chamber itself was sealed during the infrastructure work, and its precise location has not been made accessible to independent researchers. The photographs are held by a National Heritage Authority. Requests to view them have been declined. Number 5. Rome Catacombs. Italy. Everyone knows the Roman catacombs exist. That familiarity is precisely the problem. Because the version of the Roman catacombs that is known, the version that has been studied, displayed, and discussed for centuries, represents approximately 40 of the estimated 150 to 200 catacomb complexes that exist beneath the city. The known ones are mapped, managed, accessible by guided tour on specific days of the week. The others are not. Beneath Rome, there are catacomb systems that were discovered, entered, partially documented, and then reclosed during the 20th century. Some were sealed during wartime. Some were sealed during infrastructure expansion. Some were sealed because of what investigators found inside them. The Roman catacombs that are studied publicly are predominantly Christian burial sites. developed during the 1st through 4th centuries as communities needed space for their dead during a period when burial within the city walls was legally prohibited. These are the catacombs that hold the frescoes, the inscriptions, the early iconography that art historians and religious scholars study, but not all of what is underground belonged to those communities. During the expansion of the Roman subway system in the late 20th century, excavation work repeatedly uncovered catacomb passages that predated the Christian burial period. Some of these passages connected to the known systems, some did not. Some were isolated chambers that had been deliberately sealed from the outside and showed no connection to any mapped tunnel network. In several cases, what was found inside these isolated chambers was inconsistent with burial practice from any documented Roman period. What that means, concretely, has not been publicly detailed in the archaeological literature. The reports that were generated during subway construction are held by the Italian Ministry of Cultural Heritage. Partial access to some of these reports was granted to academic researchers in the early 2000s. Those researchers have described the contents in published work as requiring further study. 14 years after those descriptions were published, the further study has not been published. What is known as this? Beneath the mapped network, beneath the 40 accessible complexes, beneath the system that scholars believe they understand, there is another layer. It has been found. It has been entered. What was documented inside it has not been shared. Number 4. Alexandria Catacombs. Egypt. Alexandria was a city designed around knowledge, the library, the museum, the academic institutions that attracted scholars from across the ancient world. It was a city that believed that understanding everything was not only possible but necessary. And then it buried something. The catacomb systems beneath Alexandria are distinct from Cheops el-Shokafa, though the two sites are geographically close. The broader network of underground passages beneath the city extends across multiple sites, some connected, some not, and the full extent of the system has never been mapped. This is not a failure of modern archaeology. It is a consequence of the city's history. Alexandria has been rebuilt repeatedly over 2 millennia. Each reconstruction buried the previous layer. The underground has accumulated in ways that are not linear or systematic, layers upon layers of occupation, abandonment, and concealment that archaeologists are still working to understand. What has been found in Alexandria's underground during the 20th century includes spaces that do not fit the city's documented history. In 1997, during construction work near the ancient harbor district, workers uncovered a passage that led to a sealed chamber approximately 12 meters below the modern street level. The chamber was not a tomb. It was a library, not books, not scrolls in the sense typically associated with the ancient world, but a systematic arrangement of inscribed stone tablets, thousands of them, organized in a structure that clearly functioned as a storage and retrieval system. The tablets were not in Greek, they were not in Demotic, they were not in any script that the initial investigators could identify. The chamber was immediately secured. The tablets were not removed. A team of specialists was brought in within weeks of the discovery. The tablets were documented. What they say has not been published. The chamber was sealed during the construction project, which resumed and was completed. The building that now stands above it does not acknowledge that anything is beneath it. The tablets remain 12 meters underground in a chamber beneath a city that was built around the idea of preserving knowledge forever. Number 3. Capuchin Catacombs. Italy returned now to the Italian south, to a location that shares its order with the Palermo site but is fundamentally different in what it reveals. These are the Capuchin Catacombs of a site in Italy that holds something the Palermo corridors do not. Not preserved individuals, not visible arrangements. Something discovered in 2015 that was immediately restricted from public knowledge. During a geophysical survey conducted by researchers using ground-penetrating radar, a non-invasive scanning technique, investigators identified a sealed chamber beneath the floor of the main catacomb corridor. The chamber did not appear on any historical map of the site. It had not been referenced in any documentation from the centuries of the site's active use. The radar indicated the chamber was approximately 8 meters below the catacomb floor. It was not empty. What the radar imaging showed inside the chamber was a systematic arrangement of objects that the scan could identify as dense, regular, and deliberately organized. The arrangement was not consistent with a burial space. It was not consistent with storage. The shape of the arrangements, according to the researchers who conducted the survey, suggested something that had been assembled with intention, not placed but constructed. Permission to excavate the chamber was requested through the appropriate ecclesiastical and governmental authorities. The request was denied. It was denied not on grounds of preservation, not on grounds of structural risk. The denial cited the sensitivity of what the radar imaging had indicated was present. The chamber has not been excavated. The radar data exists. The researchers who conducted the survey have published only a partial account of their findings, noting the chamber's existence and its depth, but declining to describe in published form what the imaging showed inside it. In correspondence obtained through academic channels, one of the researchers described the chamber as containing something that had been placed there with the intention that it never be found. The chamber has not been disturbed. It remains beneath the floor of a catacomb that thousands of visitors walk through each year, none of them aware of what is 8 meters below their feet. Number 2. Odessa Catacombs. Ukraine. If you were standing at the entrance to the Odessa Catacombs, this is where the calculation would change. This is not a burial site. It was never designed as one. The Odessa Catacombs are a network of tunnels beneath the Ukrainian city of Odessa that extends, by current estimate, to approximately 2,500 kilometers in total length. That figure bears repeating. 2,500 kilometers of tunnel carved over centuries primarily for limestone extraction, running beneath the city and extending into the surrounding region. The vast majority of this network has never been mapped. The sections that have been mapped represent a fraction of the total. Within those mapped sections, there are branching passages that have not been explored, dead ends that may not be dead ends, sealed sections whose sealing was done at some point in the past by persons and for reasons that were not recorded. Within the unmapped portions of the Odessa Catacombs, things have been found. People have entered passages that no documented explorer had previously accessed and returned with discoveries that altered what researchers believed about the network's history. And some have not returned at all. The Odessa Catacombs have a documented record of disappearances. Explorers, urban investigators, researchers, individuals who entered without permission, who went into the unmapped sections and were never located. In some cases, searches conducted after disappearances discovered personal belongings in tunnels that extended beyond any previously known passage. The belongings were found, the people were not. In 2005, a group of 4 individuals entered an unmapped section of the network. 3 returned. The 4th was not found, despite an extended search. What the returning 3 reported encountering before the 4th member disappeared has been documented in the reports filed with local authorities. Those reports describe a section of tunnel whose walls had been altered, carved, marked, modified in a way that was inconsistent with any of the historical uses of the network. The markings were not extraction records, not wayfinding notations. The 3 returned individuals described them as systematic dents and covering every surface of a passage that stretched further than their lights could reach. They turned back before reaching the end of the marked passage. They heard something from that direction as they left. They could not identify what they heard. The 4th member had gone ahead. The passage was blocked by authorities after the investigation concluded. Its location within the network is recorded in closed files. No further investigation has been announced. 2,500 kilometers of tunnel. Most of it unmapped. Most of what is unmapped has never been entered. Most, not all. Number 1. Paris Catacombs. France, this is the final location, not because it is the most famous. Fame is not the reason anything appears on this list. It is last because of what it contains that has never been explained, because of what lies beneath the portion that has been opened to the public, and because of what was found in 2004 that altered how authorities in Paris think about what is underground beneath the city. The Paris Catacombs, known in official terms as the Municipal Ossuary, hold the skeletal remains of approximately 6 million individuals transferred into the tunnels beginning in the late 18th century from overcrowded Parisian cemeteries. The bones fill chambers and corridors across a network of tunnels that runs beneath the southern portion of the city, carved from limestone over centuries of quarrying. The public portion of the catacombs is approximately 2 kilometers long. It is lit. It is managed. It is visited by over 500,000 people each year. The full tunnel network beneath Paris, the catacombs in the broader sense, including all quarry passages and connected tunnels, extends to approximately 300 kilometers. 2 kilometers are accessible, 300 exist. Within the 300 kilometers, there are communities, not historical communities, present ones, groups of individuals who have established living spaces within the unmapped network, rooms furnished from materials carried in over years, libraries assembled from books transported through passages too narrow to stand upright in, galleries where art has been created and displayed in chambers that no authority has ever officially entered. In 2004, Paris police discovered a fully equipped cinema in a chamber within the unmapped network, a large screen projection equipment. Seating for dozens of people, a stocked bar area, 3 smaller chambers converted into workshop and dining spaces. The power for the equipment was drawn from the city's electrical grid through a tap that had been installed so professionally that it took engineers time to locate the source. When police returned 2 days later with additional personnel to identify who had built the space, the cinema was gone. Not dismantled, not empty. The equipment, the seating, the bar, the power connection, all removed. The chambers were bare stone. Whoever had built it had been warned, had dismantled everything within 48 hours, and had moved it somewhere within the 300 kilometers of tunnel. It has not been found. But this is not what makes the Paris Catacombs the final location on this list. In 2017, during maintenance work on a tunnel section near the boundary of the public ossuary, workers broke through what they believed was a solid limestone wall. It was not solid. It was a false wall constructed from limestone blocks with deliberate craft, designed to appear natural, positioned at a point in the tunnel that would not raise suspicion. Behind the false wall was a passage. The passage led to a chamber. The chamber had been used not historically, not in the distant past. Evidence within the chamber indicated use within the previous decade, possibly more recently. What the chamber contained, its arrangements, the objects found within it, the markings on its walls was documented by the team that entered it. The documentation was immediately transferred to French National Security Services. It has not been released. The false wall has been rebuilt. The passage and chamber are sealed. And 6 million people lie in the corridors above them, arranged in patterns that seemed, to the monks and workers who placed them there, like order, like control, like a way of making the underground something that could be understood. Whatever is in that chamber suggests otherwise. The world above Paris continues. The streets remain lit. The city operates with the confidence of a place that believes it understands what lies beneath it. 300 kilometers of tunnel says otherwise. A rebuilt false wall says otherwise. What was documented and immediately classified says otherwise. These 10 locations are not the only ones. They are the ones that have been entered, the ones where something was found, the ones where the discovery was significant enough that the people responsible for it chose to seal it again rather than share it. Beneath dozens of cities, the tunnels continue. Some have never been entered. Some were entered once, long ago, by people who left no record of what they found. Some were entered recently and the records exist. And the records are held in places that do not invite access. The Earth does not give up what is placed inside it easily, and not everything that was placed inside it was meant to be given up at all. What has been shown here is one layer, a surface layer, the reports that have been withheld, the chambers that have been resealed, the passages that were blocked after single entries. Those represent a depth that has not been reached in this account. That depth exists. Whether it is ever reached is a different question. Whether it should be reached is a question that the people who sealed these places already answered. If what lies in those depths finds its way to the surface, you will find it here first. Not because it is dramatic, not because it is entertainment, because some knowledge should not disappear quietly, even if it was buried with that intention.